Hi, this morning we're going to be grouting a tiny little bathroom on a refurbishment job we're involved with in Somerset. And I want to talk to you about grouting the tiles, which if you've looked at our ceramic tiling videos and our bathroom videos, you'll know grouting is the most important part of doing the bathroom. The joints are the vulnerable place in the bathroom, the tiles are waterproof, the joints are vulnerable, so it's really important they're full. You can buy all sorts of things to grout tiles with. This is a squeegee. This is a grout float. We actually use a sponge for grouting, because by using a sponge we can make absolutely sure that all of those joints are really full all the way back to the wall. The grout's mixed very simply by putting some water into a pot, adding the grout slowly and mixing it as you go until you get something of a consistency like this. Fairly stiff, but at the same time very flexible. So having mixed that, the first thing that we do is get hold of a hobby knife blade, or be very careful using this. You can buy these inside something called a window scraper, which protects your hands a little bit more, but if you're very careful and you use the hobby knife blade, run over the surface of the tile to make sure that any surplus adhesive is off of the tile. And sometimes when you unpack ceramic tiles, you'll find little blobs of adhesive on the corners of the tiles, and that stops them slipping about in their packet. Or sometimes the adhesive fixes the cardboard box that the tiles are in to the top tile to stop them all moving around. So using a hobby blade, clean the surface of the tiles, and if you hold that at a shallow angle you won't scratch the tiles, but get all of the bits of adhesive that you've got on the tiles when you were laying them, get them off, clean the surface of the tiles, then simply get your sponge and grab a sponge full. The sponge should be slightly damp, by the way. Run it under the cold water so that it's not dripping wet but it's damp. Get some grout onto the sponge and then literally force it into the joint. You're going to make a mess, we'll clean that up in a moment, but using your finger you can absolutely see that those joints are really full. And the grouting, it's not a 5-minute job, it should take you quite some time, but you can see by doing this. Let's get a bit more grout. I don't know if the camera can zoom in, let's say to this joint. I'll wait for the cameraman to nod at me. So I'm going to force that in there, and you can see from the camera that that's forced all the way in. Whereas using a squeegee and doing it very quickly, which you're prone to do, you can't be absolutely sure that that's full up. And I know for a fact that using that squeegee, that because of the action of the squeegee, the grout has stuck to the sides of the tile but hasn't gone all the way back to the wall. Using a sponge, I can get more grout in there. And if I can get more grout in there, it's clear that there wasn't enough in there in the first place. So that's the dangers of using a grout float and a squeegee. But you can see by using a sponge, you can absolutely force all of the grout way back to the wall. And running your finger down the grout line allows you to get shape to your grout as well. So you can see that we're beginning to get a concave shape. Okay. Now I'm not going to waste your time watching me do the whole wall, as long as you've got the idea. Using a sponge you can force the grout into the wall. When you've got the first lot in there, you could actually use the squeegee to pick up the surplus grout off the wall and then put it back into your grout pot so you're not wasting any. And then we're going to leave that grout. Once we've finished an area, let's say a couple of square meters, we'll leave that for a little while, rinse our sponge off. We'll use the back of the sponge in this situation, and then we simply go over the tiles to clean off the surplus grout. Okay, now you'll see, because on the black tile, that what's happening there is happening here, it's just not so visible. We're going to leave a surface of a film of grout. Then we wash our sponge out again, rinse it off and wipe that down. We'll have to do that a couple of times, and then by using our sponge, I won't do it with the sponge so you can see what happens, is we will run our finger inside the sponge, down the grout lines to form a nice concave finish. Don't do this with your fingers, because after a bathroom wall you'll be bleeding. Okay, so just use the sponge, run that down there, you'll get a nice concave finish to the joint. When this powder film has dried, you just buff it off with a cloth, and that's how to grout a bathroom wall.